Comity is the recognition of the jurisdictions and laws of other places. Article 4, Section 2, Clause 1 is the Comity Clause in the Constitution. It says the citizens of each state shall be entitled to all privileges and immunities of citizens of the several states. On a side note, each state are individual dependent states, and several states are the combined dependent states. However, the dependent states are within the independent states at the time of the Constitution, and so they were within the jurisdiction of the states. There were things that the Constitution allowed the federal government to do, and everything else was left to the state legislators and the people who elected those legislators. So the state was able to add privileges, but could not take away those things that the federal government was going to do in accordance with the Constitution. These dependent states were issued commands by the federal government, and they are the lands occupied by the military and for defense with sea purposes. That's the end of the side note. This is indicative of the federal government at the time the Constitution recognized the different states as making their own laws for themselves, and at the time the governments were ran by the settlers and inhabitants who were the private citizens of the state, the independent state. When Lincoln came into power, he stole the sovereignty and independence from the natural inhabitants and settlers of the states, the independent states, who made governments and laws for themselves and placed them all under the federal government, making them dependent states under federal control. An illegal act outside the Constitution. He took the masters and made them servants of the federal government. Okay, and that's against the maxim of law. You can't make the master the servant. The master's the master, the servant's the servant. If it were that the federal government was intended to be head of all the people of all the states, there would be no need to have a coup and take over the legislative buildings by force. Furthermore, the Comity Clause, which is the conflict of laws clause in the Constitution, proves that there are, in fact, different laws that must be looked at in deciding a case. Therefore, we see that independent, free, and sovereign states and governments, the natural people formed for themselves, had the right to make laws on the free lands without interference from government. Also, that the federal government had the right to make laws on the federal lands without interference from the free areas of the states. The founders recognized this, so placed into position in Article 4, the Comity Clause.